A little girl searching for her father's last memory, a dog stolen into the shadows, and a wounded Navy veteran who hears a cry no one else can. When their paths collide, secrets long buried rise again. Debts, danger, betrayal, and the truth threatens to tear a family apart. Yet in the darkest night, a miracle is born, a child's courage, a soldier's redemption, and a loyal dog fighting his way back home. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. A dim winter afternoon hung over the narrow neighborhood, its silence wrapping around the streets like a thin, cold cloth. The sky carried no rain, but everything felt damp. Buildings, breath, even thoughts. Clara walked with slow, deliberate steps, her posture not broken, but burdened, shaped by years that had pressed heavily on her rather than gracefully passed. She had not always been someone who counted coins before buying milk, nor someone who feared the knock of collectors or landlords. But the death of her husband had pushed her life into a narrow hallway of constant choices, each one harder than the last, each leaving its mark. She kept walking because stopping meant thinking too long, and thinking too long meant remembering. Beside her walked Amelia, 8-year-old, yet carrying in her eyes the awareness of someone twice her age. She held a bundle of missing dog posters so tightly that the edges curled in her palms. Every few steps, Amelia would glance at her mother as if checking whether Clara was still holding together. Children who grow up amid financial storms learn very early how to read the emotional weather of adults, and Amelia could sense when her mother's breath shook. The posters bore a single image: Rex, the German shepherd who had been part of their small family for as long as Amelia could remember. The picture was old, but it captured him well, alert, loyal, carrying within his eyes a story heavier than most animals had to bear. Clara never told Amelia this, but Rex had once belonged to her husband when he served in a remote emergency response unit. He wasn't a military service dog, but he had endured chaos and fear beside a man who needed him, and such things change an animal. After her husband died in a helicopter incident, Rex had become the last remnant of him, a living thread tying past to present, grief to survival. For Amelia, Rex was not father's dog. He was family, the piece of stability that anchored her through late-night arguments in the building, overdue rent notices, and the fragile quiet of poverty. When Rex disappeared 5 days ago, it was as if someone had removed the last source of warmth from their already thin world. "We'll find him today," Amelia murmured as she handed Clara a strip of tape to fix another poster on a leaning street pole. "I feel it." Clara smiled, but it was the kind of smile built from hope's fibers stretched too thin. She desperately wanted to believe her daughter, but she also knew neighborhoods like this. Pets didn't simply wander off, they vanished into trucks, behind gates, into hands of people who saw value only in what could be resold. Still, she knelt and tried hard to keep her fingers steady while pressing the poster flat. "That's right," she said softly. "We'll keep looking." The cold wind brushed Amelia's cheeks, but she didn't shiver. She had the stubbornness of a child who had loved fully, and the fearlessness of one who did not yet understand what the world could take from her. She kept scanning the alleys, expecting Rex's familiar silhouette to appear at any moment. For a brief instant, as she looked at Clara struggling with the next poster, Amelia wondered why her mother always seemed so tired, not just physically, but in a deeper way. She had overheard conversations she did not fully understand, late-night whispers about overdue bills, short phone calls where Clara apologized repeatedly, and once a talk about debts owed to someone whose voice alone made Amelia's stomach twist. She didn't know what it meant, but she understood this. Her mother was afraid of something beyond missing her dog. Just as Clara finished securing the next poster, she let out a long breath, almost a sigh. A part of her feared this entire search was a lie she was performing for Amelia's sake. She knew more about Rex's disappearance than she was willing to admit. She knew because she had unintentionally played a role in it, even if Amelia couldn't know that yet. But guilt is a quiet thing, and it hides behind practicality when survival demands it. Clara stood, brushing the dirt from her knees, when a shadow approached from behind. A voice, steady, calm, trained, broke the silence. "Need a hand?" Clara turned to find a man standing a few steps away. He wore a faded NW Type 3's uniform jacket, the kind not many civilians recognized, but he did not wear it for display. It looked like something he kept because it carried a piece of him he could not let go of. His right leg ended in a metal prosthetic, and the way he positioned his weight showed he had long grown used to the rhythm of walking with it, though not without effort. His posture wasn't boastful nor defeated, simply shaped by history. His name was Ethan, though they did not know that yet. He glanced at the poster gently, then studied Clara with a steady gaze. His eyes held the kind of quiet that comes from surviving things no one asks you about. There was empathy there, but also caution. A man who understood boundaries, but also recognized distress. Clara hesitated. She had learned not to trust strangers easily, especially as a woman raising a child alone. But something in Ethan's tone was unmistakably sincere, void of intrusion or pity. Still, she kept her answers measured. "It's our dog," she said, and her voice caught for just a moment, a brief crack where her strength slipped. "He's been missing." Ethan nodded slowly. Dogs don't usually disappear without traces, especially ones with eyes like his. He tapped the poster lightly, acknowledging Rex's expression in the photo. Clara felt a strange jolt, as if he had seen through something she didn't even speak aloud. Amelia shifted closer, looking up at him with cautious curiosity. She wasn't afraid. Children rarely fear those who carry genuine pain in their eyes because such people seldom harm others. "Did you lose a dog?" "Before?" Amelia asked softly. Ethan paused, and a shadow flickered behind his expression. It wasn't anger or regret, just memory. "Something like that," he said. "A long time ago." His answer was enough for Amelia. She handed him one of the posters with both hands. He took it carefully, almost ceremonially, as though receiving something precious. "What's his name?" he asked. "Rex," Amelia said, and the name trembled with hope. Ethan nodded, then studied the street as though mapping invisible patterns. Clara felt a strange mix of gratitude and vulnerability. She didn't want to rely on anyone, but she also didn't want to fail Amelia. And for a moment, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this stranger understood loss well enough to help. After a quiet moment, Ethan looked down the road. "I've seen some things in neighborhoods like this," he said lightly, but his tone carried weight. "If Rex is out here, we'll find him." Clara opened her mouth to protest the "we," but Amelia spoke first, her voice brightening. "So you'll help?" Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and something softened in his posture. "I'll keep an eye out," he said. Then he pressed the poster against another pole and secured it with calm precision, as though treating the act like a mission directive. For the first time in days, Amelia smiled. Clara watched the scene with a mix of warmth and unease. She wanted to believe he genuinely wanted to help, but deep inside, beneath layers of fatigue and fear, she refused to unpack. Something whispered that her life had already tangled itself too deeply with secrets she could barely face. And now another witness had stepped onto the path. As the winter dusk settled further, the three of them stood together at the corner of a worn-out street, bound by a missing dog, an unspoken grief, and the beginning of a story none of them expected. And somewhere, behind a locked door in a house with peeling blue paint, Rex lay awake. Not broken, but waiting, his spirit tense with the instinct that someone he loved was searching for him. The afternoon light thinned across the cramped streets, stretching long shadows between crooked fences and uneven pavement, as if the neighborhood itself were exhaling. Ethan walked a short distance behind Clara and Amelia, not out of reluctance, but because he sensed they needed the space to hold their own thoughts. He had seen families walk like this before, pacing their grief in small, careful steps. His years in military service had taught him to read more from how people moved than from what they said. Every few minutes Amelia looked back to make sure he was still there, and each time he gave her a small nod, silent reassurance that he was committed to this search. Clara did not look back at all. Her eyes remained forward, as though turning might reveal everything she was trying to hide. There was a stiffness to her shoulders that had nothing to do with exhaustion. She kept her hands inside her coat pockets as though hiding the tremor in them. She wanted help, but not questions. Ethan recognized that tension. Many people he had helped overseas had worn the same kind of armor, built not from confidence, but from desperation. He also recognized something else: guilt. But guilt had many shapes, and he didn't yet know which one belonged to Clara. When they reached the crossroads where the street narrowed into an alley, Amelia slowed, tugging lightly at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, this way," she said. Her voice was gentle, but the certainty in it startled Clara. She turned sharply, her expression tightening in a fraction of a second before she masked it with practicality. "Amelia, yesterday you were tired. Maybe you imagined it," Clara insisted, not harshly, but with a strange urgency. "Dogs wander. They don't stay inside houses." Amelia did not argue. She simply stepped forward into the alley, trusting the memory of the eyes she had seen behind the cracked fence. Ethan followed, observing Clara out of the corner of his vision. He noticed the way she swallowed, her throat tightening, as though she already knew what they might find. The alley led them toward a row of houses, patched with makeshift repairs. Even from a distance, one stood out. Its wooden exterior, once painted blue, now peeled into tired flakes, revealing older layers beneath. The windows were covered with boards that looked hastily nailed, and the front gate leaned inward, as if exhausted from holding itself upright. Before they reached it, a man stepped out from behind a parked van. He was middle-aged, with a solid build softened by time, dressed plainly in clothes meant more for function than appearance. His name, according to the embroidered patch on his jacket, was Gibbs, though the man himself seemed uninterested in people knowing anything beyond that. His gaze lingered too long on Amelia, then on Clara. Not in a threatening way, but in the way someone might assess whether these people would cause trouble later. Ethan spoke first. "Afternoon," he said. "We're looking for a missing dog." Gibbs nodded once, neither warm nor dismissive. "People lose dogs around here all the time," he replied. "They run through alleys, get scared by cars, wander into places they shouldn't." "We think someone may be keeping him," Amelia said quietly. Gibbs turned his gaze fully toward her then, and something fleeting crossed his eyes. Not cruelty, not kindness, something closer to recognition. As if he had seen many children stand in alleys begging for the return of something taken from them. He shifted, glancing toward the peeling blue house. "That one's just an old place," he said. "Owner doesn't like visitors. Best not to bother him." Ethan took a slow breath. He didn't step forward or raise his voice. He simply let the silence settle until Gibbs looked at him again. Years of military service had taught Ethan how to hold ground with presence rather than force. "We're not here to bother anyone," he said. "Just looking for a dog. That means a lot to this family." Gibbs hesitated. Not long, but enough that Ethan caught it. Clara caught it too, and her hand tightened around Amelia's shoulder. Without another word, Gibbs walked away, not quickly, but with a purposeful step, as if distancing himself from whatever might unfold next. Ethan watched him go, committing his mannerisms to memory. People who carried burdens often had walk patterns like that, heavy in the heel, light in the toes, as if ready to turn back but unwilling to face what they had left behind. Amelia's voice broke the silence. "That's the house," she whispered. Clara shook her head instantly. "No, it doesn't make sense, Amelia. Why would Rex be here?" The question trembled, revealing fear beneath the logic. Ethan did not contradict her. Instead, he crouched beside Amelia so he could speak to her at eye level. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Amelia nodded. She narrowed her eyes slightly, as if trying to pull the memory forward with precision. "Yesterday, when we walked home, I dropped my pencils. They rolled near that gate. When I picked them up, I heard something. Soft, like someone trying not to make noise. And when I looked up, I saw eyes. Not scary eyes, sad ones." She paused, swallowing emotion. It felt like Rex. Ethan felt a quiet tightening in his chest. Dogs, especially ones with seasoned histories like Rex, often showed emotion in ways humans underestimated. If Amelia had sensed him, it was worth following. Clara placed a hand on her daughter's back. Her breath trembled, a small crack in the mask she had held tightly since they started. "Sweetheart, even if you thought you saw him, we should be careful. Some people don't appreciate strangers wandering near their homes." The words landed flat. She sounded less like she feared a confrontation, and more like she feared someone might tell the truth she didn't want spoken aloud. Ethan stood and approached the gate, without touching it. He listened. A faint rustle, or perhaps the memory of one, drifted from somewhere inside. He couldn't confirm anything, but he knew that stillness could sometimes lie. He turned to Clara. "I won't go inside," he said. "But I can ask around, talk to a few people. If someone took Rex, we can find out." Clara's throat tightened again. Her instinct was to refuse, to tell him no, to pull Amelia away, to preserve the fragile lie that she had woven to erase her own guilt. But she could not bring herself to meet Ethan's eyes. Instead, she said, "I don't want trouble." Ethan did not push. "Finding a missing dog isn't trouble," he replied softly. "It's the right thing to do." Amelia stepped closer to the fence, not touching it, but absorbing the stillness behind it. "I know he's here," she whispered, and somehow her certainty made the air feel heavier. Ethan looked once more at the peeling blue house. Something was wrong, but wrongness didn't always reveal itself immediately. Sometimes it lingered behind doors, waiting for the right moment to unravel. He turned to Clara. "We don't have to go in today, but I'd like to come back tomorrow, maybe talk to a few neighbors, see if anyone saw something." Clara hesitated too long before nodding. When she did, her agreement sounded more like surrender than collaboration. As they walked away from the alley, Ethan looked over his shoulder one last time. The blue house seemed to watch them leave, holding secrets tightly behind rotting wood. And inside, somewhere beyond the boarded windows, something shifted, soft, controlled, as if aware that searchers had finally stepped onto the right path. Ethan didn't say anything aloud, but he felt it. The situation was deeper than a missing dog, much deeper. And tomorrow he would have to decide how far he was willing to go into whatever waited behind that peeling blue paint. Night crept into the apartment like a slow-moving tide, filling the corners with a cold quiet that Clara had learned to fear. The building settled with small metallic clicks, pipes groaned behind thin walls, and somewhere outside a dog barked twice before falling silent again. Amelia sat on the worn rug of their living room, hugging her knees, her eyes fixed on the door as if expecting Rex to stroll through it the way he used to, tail wagging, head tilting, waiting for her to greet him. But the door remained closed. Clara moved around the kitchen quietly, her thoughts heavy, her heartbeat inconsistent with her movements. She was trying to appear calm, but her mind churned with numbers, deadlines, threats, and a decision she wished she could erase. She avoided Amelia's gaze, avoided her own reflection, avoided anything that reminded her of the truth she had buried while pretending to search for Rex. When Amelia finally spoke, her voice was small but steady, the kind of steadiness that frightened Clara because it meant her daughter was beginning to sense everything she had tried to hide. "Mom," Amelia said, "if Rex is out there, he must be scared." Clara froze in place, fingers tightening around the mug she held. She swallowed before answering. "Yes, sweetheart, but dogs are strong. He'll find a way to be okay." The lie pressed hard against her ribs. She set the mug down quickly before Amelia could see her hands shake. She had once promised her husband, long before debt collectors and final notices, that she would never lie to their daughter. But promises are easy when life is kind. Breaking them becomes easier when survival demands it. Amelia shifted her gaze toward the small corner of the room where Rex used to sleep. His blanket still lay folded neatly, the edges flattened by habit. Amelia stood, walked over, and touched the fabric lightly with the tips of her fingers, as if hoping to feel warmth that was no longer there. "Mom," she said again, softer this time, "do you think someone took him?" The question sliced through Clara, and her breath caught as though the air itself had betrayed her. She forced herself not to react. "I don't know," she said, but her voice wavered. Amelia examined her mother for a long moment. Children don't need explanations to understand emotion. They read silence better than adults do. The girl kneeling at the blanket sensed something was wrong, wrong enough that she needed answers the world hadn't given her yet. That was when she remembered the loose floorboard. It wasn't new. She had stepped on it many times, but never thought much of it until today, when Ethan had knelt beside her in the alley and asked her to describe exactly what she saw. He didn't treat her like a child. He treated her like someone who mattered, someone whose observations could change something. And that memory brought with it the sharp pull of courage. Amelia rose quietly and walked toward the hallway. Clara didn't notice. She had sunk into a chair, both elbows on her knees, staring at her hands as though they belonged to someone who had made better choices. The hallway was narrow, lit only by the faint spill of light from the living room. Amelia approached the board near her mother's bedroom. She pressed her foot down gently. The wood dipped. Her heart started to race. She crouched, hooked her fingers into the small gap, and lifted. It came up more easily than she expected, revealing a shallow compartment beneath. Dust coated the edges, and in the center lay a small cloth bundle tied loosely with frayed string. Amelia's breath hitched. She pulled it out and unfolded the cloth. Inside was a notebook, old, creased, the edges warped from moisture. The moment her fingers touched it, she felt something cold and electric glide through her chest, like the instinct before a storm. She opened the book carefully. The first pages contained scribbles, lists of phone numbers, sums of money, short words written in haste. But as she turned the pages, her eyes widened. She found a list of animals, breeds, colors, dates, and next to many of them, a single word: sold. Her pulse accelerated. These weren't random notes. They were records. And then she saw it. Rex, not written in her mother's careful handwriting, but in someone else's heavier script. Next to his name was a number Clara had whispered many times into the phone during stressful nights, and beside the number was the word she feared the most: sold. Her stomach dropped so sharply she felt dizzy. She stared at the page, willing the word to change, but the letters stayed the same, steady and cruel. A wave of sadness washed over her, deep, gripping sadness. But beneath it, something else stirred. Anger. Not the wild anger of a tantrum, but the quiet, shaking anger of someone who has been lied to about something sacred. The notebook slipped slightly in her trembling hands. Behind her, the floor creaked. Clara stood at the end of the hallway, her face drained of color. For several seconds, neither spoke. The silence between them carried everything Clara had tried to bury. "Amelia," she whispered, "put that down." Amelia clutched the notebook closer, tears forming but refusing to fall. "Mom, what is this?" Clara stepped forward, then stopped again, as if an invisible line between them prevented her from taking another step. Her breath shook. "I didn't want this. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you sold him?" The question broke Clara's composure. Her shoulders slumped as though struck. "I had no choice," she whispered, each word cracking. "We were drowning. The debts kept growing. They threatened us. They said Rex was valuable. I thought we could manage without him, that you were strong enough." "He was Dad's," Amelia said, voice cracking. "He was all I had left of him." Clara covered her mouth, her eyes shining with remorse, but remorse did not change the truth. Amelia didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply closed the notebook, turned away, and wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. That restraint hurt Clara more than any outburst possibly could. "Where is he now?" Amelia asked softly. "I don't know," Clara whispered. "They didn't tell me. They only said he'd be taken to someone who—" Her voice collapsed. "Someone who pays." Amelia walked past her, clutching the notebook like a shield. She did not look back. Clara reached out a hand, but let it fall when she realized she no longer had the right to stop her daughter. Moments later, the apartment door opened with a soft click. Clara rushed after her, but by the time she reached the stairwell, Amelia was already running down the steps, running toward the only person she believed could save Rex now. Ethan. The cold night air swept into the hallway behind her like an omen. Clara stood motionless for a long moment, trembling. She knew what she had set in motion, and she knew that tomorrow, when Ethan returned to that peeling blue house, he would no longer be searching for a lost dog. He would be uncovering a crime, and Clara feared what else he might uncover along the way. Night settled over the neighborhood with a heavy stillness, the kind that makes every sound feel louder, sharper, as if the darkness itself were listening. Ethan sat at his small kitchen table, the dim yellow light above him flickering occasionally, reflecting faintly on the metal of his prosthetic leg. He wasn't a man easily unsettled, but tonight he felt a pull he had not experienced since his active duty years, the sense that someone out there needed him, urgently, and that time was not a luxury. When the knock came, it was soft and frantic. Ethan stood immediately. He opened the door to find Amelia, breathless, cheeks flushed from running, clutching something against her chest. She looked smaller than she had earlier, not in size but in the weight she carried. He knelt just slightly, enough to meet her eyes without towering. "Amelia," he said gently, "what happened?" She held out the notebook with trembling hands. "It's Rex," she whispered, voice cracking. "Mom, she sold him." The words fell out in broken pieces. Ethan took the notebook, scanning the entries quickly. He had seen ledgers like these overseas, coded logs used by traffickers, dealers, people who profited off what wasn't theirs. His jaw tightened. He didn't comment on Clara yet. Instead, he placed a steady hand on Amelia's shoulder. "You did the right thing coming here," he said. "We'll fix this." But Amelia shook her head urgently. "Rex is in danger. They could move him. I know it." Ethan didn't doubt her. Dogs sold in operations like this rarely stayed in one place for long. The peeling blue house she mentioned earlier now pulled into sharp focus, along with the evasive behavior of Gibbs. He grabbed his jacket, simple, functional, and checked the flashlight he kept by the door. Before they left, he crouched again, lowering his voice. "Amelia, you need to stay here. It might get dangerous." She clutched his sleeve tighter. "No," she said, shaking her head fiercely. Rex is my family." Ethan paused. The intensity in her voice reminded him of young soldiers who had fought not for orders, but for the person beside them. He weighed the risks. Then he made a decision he seldom made. He nodded. "Stay close and do exactly what I say." She nodded, wiping her tears quickly. They moved through the silent streets, Amelia half a step behind him, her determination holding her upright despite the tremor in her breaths. Ethan noticed she walked with the certainty of someone guided not by logic, but by something deeper, love mixed with fear. It was a combination he respected. When they reached the alley, the peeling blue house loomed darker than before. A faint light flickered behind one of the boarded windows, casting slanted shadows onto the ground. Ethan scanned the area with trained eyes. No movement outside, no voices, but stillness could be a mask. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Amelia nodded and grabbed the back of his jacket lightly, the way someone clings not out of weakness, but to stay tethered to courage. Ethan approached the gate, not touching it yet. He listened. For a moment, only silence answered. Then a soft, muffled sound, a whimper, familiar enough to make Amelia gasp. "Rex," she breathed. Ethan raised a hand to quiet her gently. The whimper came again, deeper this time, with a strain that told him the dog was nervous, but alert. That was good. It meant Rex was conscious, aware, still fighting inside. Suddenly, footsteps echoed at the far end of the alley. Ethan turned quickly, pulling Amelia back into the shadow between the gate and the fence. A figure approached, broad-shouldered, moving with unhurried steps, but scanning the alley like someone conditioned to distrust the dark. Gibbs. Ethan studied his face in the dim light. Gibbs didn't look cruel. He looked worn, hardened by necessity rather than malice. But necessity could make men dangerous. As Gibbs reached the gate, he pulled out a key. Ethan stepped forward. "Evening," he said quietly. Gibbs froze, shoulders tensing. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. Ethan kept his voice calm. "There's a dog inside. He belongs to this girl." Gibbs looked at Amelia then, his expression softening with discomfort. "I didn't take the dog," he said. "I just keep watch." "For who?" Ethan asked. Gibbs hesitated, and that hesitation was answer enough. Ethan stepped closer. "You know what happens in places like this," he said, low but firm. "Animals sold, moved, mistreated, and you know it isn't right." Gibbs looked away. His voice cracked slightly when he finally spoke. "I needed money, that's all." Amelia stepped out from behind Ethan. "Please," she whispered. "He's my Rex." The simplicity of her voice broke something in Gibbs. He sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead with a trembling hand. "If the owner's inside, you won't reason with him," he said quietly. "He doesn't care who the dog belongs to." Ethan felt the shift in the air, the moment before a mission becomes inevitable. "Unlock the gate," he said, "or step aside." Gibbs stared at him. "You're not law. You can't just force your way in." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "You're right. That's why I already called them." As if on cue, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Gibbs flinched. Panic flickered in his eyes. Then, unexpectedly, he unlocked the gate. "Go," he whispered. "But you didn't hear it from me." Ethan placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement. Then he entered, motioning Amelia to stay right behind him. Inside the yard, the shadows felt heavier. A door stood slightly ajar. Ethan pushed it open slowly. The smell hit first, stale, damp, tinged with something metallic. Amelia covered her nose. A faint sound echoed from the back room. Ethan moved forward cautiously, scanning corners. Furniture, exits. When he reached the back room and nudged the door open, there he was. Rex. Curled in a crate but alert, ears raised, eyes wide the moment he saw Amelia. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply stared, recognition flooding him so intensely that his body trembled. The moment Amelia saw him, tears burst from her eyes. She ran to the crate before Ethan could stop her, dropping to her knees. "Rex," she whispered, "it's okay. We're here." Rex pressed his forehead to the bars, a small whimper escaping, a sound full of longing, apology, relief. Ethan knelt and examined the lock. Cheap padlock, easily breakable. He fished out a small multi-tool from his pocket, a habit from years of field work. But before he could snap the lock, the front door slammed open. Heavy footsteps, a man shouting. Ethan's body reacted instantly, positioning himself between Amelia and the hallway. The man who stormed in had a harsh voice shaped by years of shouting orders, his silhouette broad and impatient. He wasn't shocked to find intruders. He was angry. "Get away from that dog," he barked. Amelia flinched. Rex growled, low and protective. Ethan stood slowly, turning to face the man. "That dog isn't yours," he said calmly, "and the police are seconds away." The man took a step forward, but the wail of sirens erupted right outside, lights flashing through boarded cracks. For the first time, fear crossed his face. Ethan broke the padlock in one hard motion. The crate door swung open. Rex shot forward and pressed himself against Amelia, shielding her with instinctive loyalty. Officers burst into the house moments later, shouting commands, securing the man. Gibbs stood outside, head low, speaking to another officer. When the commotion settled, Amelia wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, burying her face into him. Ethan watched quietly, feeling something unspoken settle in his chest, a mixture of relief and foreboding, because he knew this rescue was only the beginning of something deeper. As the officers led the man away, one turned to Ethan. "You found this place fast," he said. Ethan nodded. "We had help." The officer eyed Gibbs, then the torn crate. "Good thing you came tonight," he added. They were planning to move the animals tomorrow. A chill ran through Amelia. She hugged Rex even tighter. Ethan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "He's safe," he murmured, "but we need to talk about what comes next." And as Amelia looked up at him with wide, questioning eyes, Ethan felt the weight of Chapter 5 forming, because saving Rex was only the first part. Keeping him safe would demand a truth that could shatter everything waiting at home. Morning rose weakly over the neighborhood. Its light filtered through thin clouds that dulled the world into muted gray. The kind of morning that made everything feel heavier, as though the earth itself had exhaled after a long night. Ethan stood outside the police station with Amelia and Rex, waiting for Clara to arrive. Officers moved in and out of the building with purposeful strides, some stopping briefly to acknowledge Ethan with professional nods. His calm presence and steady guidance during last night's rescue had made an impression. Amelia sat on the bench beside him, her arms wrapped around Rex. The dog rested his head on her lap, eyes half closed, but alert in the way animals become after surviving danger. He wasn't trembling. His heart had steadied into something strong again, as though being reunited with Amelia had anchored him to what mattered. But even grounded, even safe, there was an undercurrent of tension, something he sensed instinctively. Dogs know when something is ending before people speak it aloud. Ethan noticed the way Amelia clung to Rex, her fingertips pressing lightly but constantly into his fur. She was holding on, as though afraid any distance between them might give fate a chance to take him again. Yet beneath her relief there was worry. Worry shaped not by fear of danger, but by fear of choice. That choice belonged to her mother. Clara arrived moments later, walking slowly toward them. She had not slept. Her eyes carried the swollen edge of someone who had cried quietly for hours, but her shoulders were no longer tense with denial. Something inside her had broken open the previous night, revealing not only guilt, but understanding. An officer named Ruiz approached her briefly. Ruiz was a man built from the steady patience needed in community cases, carrying himself with a kind professionalism shaped by years of navigating desperate families. He spoke gently to Clara, explaining the charges against the dog trafficker, the statements needed, and the protective actions being taken. Clara nodded through it all, barely hearing him. Her gaze remained fixed on her daughter. When Ruiz stepped away, Clara moved closer. "Amelia," she whispered, her voice low. "Can we talk?" Amelia didn't let go of Rex. Clara sat on the bench beside her daughter and let out a long breath. "I'm sorry," she began, but Amelia shook her head. "I know," the girl replied softly, "but it doesn't make it okay." Clara flinched, but she didn't defend herself. She knew better now than to place words between her daughter and the truth. Instead, she looked at Rex, the dog whose absence had exposed all her mistakes. "I put you both in danger," she admitted. "I told myself I was doing it to protect us. But that wasn't true. I was just scared." Amelia touched Rex's ear, her movements tender. "What happens now?" she asked. Clara swallowed. She looked at Ethan, who met her eyes steadily. She could see the parts of the whole hesitation in him. He wanted to help, but he respected boundaries and waited for her to ask. "The officer said we might have to move," Clara said quietly. "We're behind on rent, and the people I owed money to." Her voice wavered. "They won't be happy about last night." Amelia looked up sharply. "But Rex can come with us, right?" Clara's breath caught. She had known this moment would come, but knowing didn't soften the blow. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "I'm not sure where we'll go yet. It might not be safe for him." Amelia's eyes widened. Ethan stepped closer, kneeling slightly so he was level with both of them. "Clara," he said, his voice even, "Rex isn't just a dog. He's been through trauma. He needs stability. If you're moving from place to place, he could slip into panic again. And if those men threaten you—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Clara nodded, tears forming. "I know." Amelia's arms tightened around Rex. The dog lifted his head, sensing her distress, pressing closer as if reassuring her. Ethan looked at Amelia carefully. "He loves you," he said. "He'll always know you're his person. But right now, he needs somewhere steady, somewhere he can heal." Amelia looked at Ethan, then at her mother, then finally at Rex. The dog stared at her with a calm acceptance that shattered her. He trusted her enough to follow whatever choice she made, even if it hurt him. "Are you saying he should stay with you?" she asked Ethan. Ethan nodded once, slowly. "Only if you want that, and only until your life is safe and stable again. I'll take care of him like he's mine." Clara covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Amelia buried her face in Rex's neck. Minutes passed before she lifted her head again, her eyes red but determined. "Rex," she whispered, "you're my family, but I don't want you to get hurt because of us. I don't want you to be scared anymore." Rex pressed his forehead against her chest, breathing her in like he was memorizing her scent. She held his face in both hands. "You stay with Ethan," she said. "He knows how to protect you, and I'll come visit every week, I promise." Rex blinked slowly, the way dogs do when they accept something they don't fully understand, but trust the person who asks it of them. Clara wrapped her arm around her daughter, crying silently. Ethan felt a deep ache in his chest, not pity, but something like respect. Respect for a child strong enough to give someone else a better life. Officer Ruiz returned with paperwork, confirming that Rex could legally stay with Ethan as a temporary guardian while Clara stabilized her situation. Clara nodded through it, signing where needed. As they prepared to leave, Amelia stood and hugged Rex one last time for the day. "Be good," she whispered. "You'll be safe here." Then she looked at Ethan. "Please take care of him." Ethan placed a hand over his heart. "With everything I have." As Clara and Amelia walked away, Rex whimpered softly, wanting to follow. Ethan placed a calming hand on the dog's back. "She'll come back," he said. "She's not letting go. She's just giving you what you need." The dog settled, though his gaze remained fixed on Amelia until she disappeared around the corner. And as the sun finally broke through the clouds, warming the worn pavement, Ethan felt something shift inside the quiet of his chest. This wasn't the end of a rescue. It was the beginning of a family formed not by blood, but by choice, resilience, and the courage to let love take the shape it needed to survive. In the end, this story isn't just about a little girl, a lost dog, or a soldier carrying the quiet weight of yesterday. It's about something far greater, something many of us forget in the noise of everyday life. It's about how God often works in ways we cannot see, placing the right people on our path at the exact moment we need them, even when we feel most abandoned. Sometimes His miracles don't come as thunder or blinding light. Sometimes they come as a child brave enough to tell the truth, a soldier willing to open his heart again, a mother learning to rise from her mistakes, or a loyal dog who teaches us what unconditional love really looks like. And maybe, just maybe, God sends these small miracles to remind us that even in brokenness, we are never alone, that healing may not arrive the way we expect, but it arrives, through people, through choices, through second chances. Rex found a safe home, Amelia found hope, Clara found the courage to change, and Ethan discovered that broken souls can become protectors of new beginnings. That is the quiet miracle beating at the heart of this story. And as you're listening right now, I want you to remember this. God can turn any ending into a beginning if we let Him. Whatever you're facing today, whatever burden sits heavy on your heart, may this story remind you that His light reaches even the smallest, coldest corners of our lives. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Leave a comment about the miracle you're praying for, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to bring you stories of hope, faith, and second chances. And may God bless you, protect you, and guide you through every storm you face. From our little family to yours, may His grace be with you always.